the Los Angeles Dodgers, Donald Trump's ICE raids, and the Fourth Amendment. We're talking about all three of those things together at the same time today. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. We are partners at a law firm in Los Angeles called Kabateck LLP. We have a nationwide practice on a civil law and dealing with a bunch of various issues. And we're on the Legal AF network, and we're happy to be here. And today we're talking about something that I think is close to Brian's heart, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
So I want to talk about the Dodgers a lot, but today I'm only going to talk about issues surrounding the Dodgers and ICE and Trump, and how Trump is going after one of the most beloved teams and team fan base in the United States. So in order to get there, Sean, I got to start by explaining something that I'm sure most people understand. The population of Los Angeles County, which has somewhere between 10 and 11 million people, is roughly 46% Latino. That means 46% of the people living in Los Angeles County identify themselves as Latino. And not surprisingly, the fan base of the Los Angeles Dodgers is somewhere between 40 and 45% Latino. The Dodgers are beloved by the Latino community in Los Angeles. Fernando Valenzuela, legendary pitcher who died last year, was from Mexico. The local Latino fan base has a beloved name for the Dodgers, Los Doyers, and that's not a slam. That's what they call them, and it's well respected in Los Angeles. So where does that lead us, Sean? Why is that relevant to our discussion today? Well, Trump's decided to come after the Dodger fans.
Well, I was going to say the fact that Los Angeles is a very heavily Hispanic or Latino community probably makes it Trump's prime target for these ridiculous ICE raids and wide-scale violations of the Fourth Amendment. And Dodger Stadium is kind of, I don't want to say it's at the epicenter of that, but it's like another place for him to put on this political theater and try to push his boundaries here. So what happened recently with the Dodgers or at Dodger Stadium on this issue?
Well, it's not probably at the epicenter. It is sort of at the epicenter right now, even as we speak, because in the last few days, ICE or Border Patrol or some federal agency under Trump's direction showed up at Los Angeles Dodger Stadium, and they were apparently trying to gain access. Now, this is important to understand, is that Dodger parking, probably no surprise to people listening across the country, is one of the most expensive parking lots for a Major League Baseball game in the country, anywhere from $30 to $50 per vehicle, and much, much more if you're coming in a bus or a large van or something like that. So they came to the gates and they wanted access, and they were turned away and denied by the Dodgers. But Sean, that turns us to a very interesting discussion about where ICE can enter and where they can't enter, despite the fact that Trump would like them going door to door and coming into people's homes, particularly brown people's homes. They can't do that, right?
Why can't they do that? They work for the United States government. Donald Trump has told them to go out and do this. Why can't they do that, Brian?
Because of the pesky Constitution of the United States, which Trump himself has admitted he doesn't understand and doesn't have a full understanding of, despite the fact on January 20th, he took an oath, probably with his fingers crossed behind his back, to uphold the Constitution. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution specifically prohibits unreasonable search and seizure. So let's talk about what the law says a government like ICE agency can and can't do.
Right. In a public place, they can do that, right? They can, well, they still have limitations. They can't just stop anyone. And we've talked about this on other episodes. They can't just stop anyone and ask for their papers. That's not something that happens in the United States. That's the Constitution protects against that. But in terms of entering places, they can go out and enter anywhere in the public, right? The streets, something like that, any sort of public space that's accessible to the public. But a parking lot like this, how does it shake out there, Brian, when it's a parking lot, but one that's actually, much to Dodger fans' dismay, expensive to enter? It's not generally accessible to the public without paying. So how does that shake?
It's a super open question. So let's kind of take the extremes here first. So to explain it, is that, first of all, a private residence. The government cannot enter, despite what Trump may think, a private residence unless they have a warrant, a judicial warrant, which is very important to understand. a judicial warrant signed by a judge. That's what
What
the
other kind of
law
warrants?
is.
What other kind of warrants are there? And well, why don't
Well,
those?
that's right. There's an administrative warrant. And an administrative warrant is like the health department issuing a warrant to come in and search a restaurant to make sure that it complies with health violations, not criminal law type issues. So it has to be a judicial warrant. Let's start with that. Can't go to that. Now let's go to the other easy extreme, which is some public parking lot someplace that's open to the public. There's no charge for it. Anyone can go into that parking lot at any time. That's open. They can go in there. So now we get in the middle here. And we can talk about, let me give a very clear example that's supported by the law. A business is open to the public. The government can enter that portion of the business that's open to the public, the showroom floor, for example, at an auto dealership. But they can't go into the break rooms. They can't go into the private offices without a warrant, right?
Yeah. But can't the owner of that property, the owner of that business, the operator of that business, ask them to leave, meaning revoke the permission they have?
Exactly, Sean. Exactly. So despite the fact that Trump wants people coming into your homes, your businesses, wherever, even if it's a public space, even that parking lot example I gave you, let's say it's a parking lot of a supermarket, the owner of the supermarket could come out and say, leave, and they have to leave. They do not have a right then to be there. No more than, a patron who comes in without a shirt and shoes who can be told to leave a business, right?
I thought we're not going to talk about that. That was just one time. I'm sorry I did that.
Well, it was embarrassing for you mostly, right?
And also, what happens when someone violates, like the government agency or whatever the law enforcement agency is, whoever it is, ICE, masked men, whoever they are, Trump's henchmen? What happens when they violate that rule and they come in and they violate the Fourth Amendment?
Well, if they fully violate the Fourth Amendment and then they end up arresting somebody or they end up taking some action, those can be voided. And those can be voided by the courts. And there's another important issue to remember here, too, which is the government is not immune from civil lawsuits, from civil rights violations, from statutory lawsuits that could be brought. And they certainly could be brought in these instances if the government refuses. I know for a fact what Dodger Stadium did was said, leave. You're not welcome here. Leave. And they did.
And also, we've said it before, and I think it bears repeating that there is civil liability for these wide-scale, blatant violations of the Fourth Amendment. And I think in the long run, people are, American citizens who are being stopped and arrested for not having their papers on them or whatever are going to turn around and sue the government for doing this. And it's going to ultimately end up with taxpayers. Trump's actions are going to backfire and taxpayers are going to have to pick up the tab. But I want to shift to something else now. What was the Dodgers' response? You did say big Latino fan base. A lot of their fans are loyal fans. It's sort of part of the culture in LA. And as you said, Latino culture is ingrained. It's part of LA's culture. So what did the Dodgers do? Did they stand up right away and say, no way, you can't do this? We stand with immigrants. We stand with the rights of these people. Did they say that?
No, their response has been rather disappointing and rather lethargic, considering the Dodgers have a large number of Latino players. A large number of them are not from the United States. And their initial response was, I think they went into absolutely paralysis over this. Yeah. And what people were expecting the Dodgers to do was come out right away and say, this is an outrage. We can't imagine it. I mean, what clearly the Trump administration is trying to do is scare Latino fans away from attending Dodger games and places like that, because what they would like to do is sit there and check people's papers as they come in and out of Dodger Stadium. But what the Dodgers have now done in the last couple of days is they've put up $1 million into some funds supporting immigrant rights. It's sort of a day late and $1 million too short, right? I mean, Dodgers make so much money. That's probably half game's earnings off of their concession sales at Dodger Stadium.
That's like Dodger Dog sales for
what's that?
That's like Dodger Dog sales for like one game.
Right. For you personally, Dodger Dog sales. And what and Shant's very excited because the mustard and onions are free. So he can have as much mustard and onions as possible. But he did learn the tough way that you have to actually buy a hot dog first. You can't just put your hand out and take
it. The rules don't say that, but okay.
I'm going astray here. One of the players, Kiki Hernandez, a longtime veteran Dodger and longtime veteran Major League Baseball player, did come out and refer to this as outrageous. And he came out and said this was, pretty outrageous. But and the longtime, now retired, beloved Dodger Spanish language broadcaster Jaime Aron came out and said this was an outrage and came out against it. But the Dodgers have still taken a pretty lethargic view, and it's certainly, in my opinion at least, because there is a fan base there that's MAGA. I mean, there are people in Los Angeles, a few of them, who are super Trump supporters. And I'm sure they did this because they wanted to butter their bread on both sides. And it's kind of disgusting and kind of disappointing. So, look, my final comments on this are, first and foremost, the Dodgers and major league teams and major events, Disneyland, places like this, are all vulnerable to Trump, but it's illegal. It's illegal. You can't do this. And these businesses, from the small mom and pop, little business to Dodger Stadium, should tell ICE and tell Trump to shove it. You're not welcome here. Get out. But if they do, and they do come in, people have rights. And we've covered that, and we'll probably end up covering that many times before. So those are my final thoughts, Sean.
I think Trump doesn't care about that. I think this is deliberate, targeting places like this. I bet you this was part of Stephen Miller's great plan to do something like this at a high-profile place. And it's part political theater, but also part testing the boundaries of what is acceptable, but also at the same time trying to rile up his base. So I think it's really sad to see, but I think the awareness that the people have about this, the more awareness there is, the more likely it is to be able to shut them down. And I hope organizations like the Dodgers do shut them down, or other places that they try to do this, because this isn't the first time. It's not going to be the last time, certainly. But thank you for tuning in. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. We are two lawyers at Kabateck LLP, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.